Greetings and salutations, friends. This is Microsoft Flight Simulator, and patch version 1.8.3.0, mouthful, is now available. And this is an interesting patch with a lot going on. 15 gig. Wonder what that is decompressed. Now let's have a quick look at the list here. Performance improvements. We've optimized the cockpit screen display when the screens are not displayed on screen. What the hell kind of a sentence is that? Okay, so I think what they're saying is they've optimized how the screens are displayed in the 3D cockpit when they're not visible on the screen. New option available to control a cockpit screen update frequency. Ooh, that's handy. Tweaked the CPU thread priorities to reduce interruption of frame critical threads. Optimized a loading system to reduce overall loading times. Optimized heavy airport sceneries impact on the CPU. Reduced the amount of GPU overdraw to improve GPU performance. Memory optimizations to reduce the software memory footprint and improve performance on memory limited computers. I'm sure many of you out there are happy to hear about that one. And overall performance optimizations. ATC wise, the incoming Azure speech has 3 different voices now. The ATC voice gender is now based on the avatar of the pilot and or co-pilot. And there is a fix for the incorrect voice pack being used if the game is not localized in English. As for the UI, filters and sorting have been improved in the marketplace. Manual cache layout has been improved and the download estimated time should now be correct. Improved support for gamepad navigation in the menus. Case-sensitive search is now working properly in the control screen. Search by access in control screen has also been fixed. Active pause button has been added to the toolbar. Oh, very good. And the pause button has been fixed in the content manager. Aerodynamics improved the wind turbulence simulation to reduce horizontal turbulence. Added simulation of low RPM piston engine vibrations to the cockpit. Ooh, nice. Added simulation of water particles, rain and cloud density in Aerodynamics. Generates vibrations flying through the cloud or rain. Fixed wet surface friction and braking distances. And fixed live weather wind offset at higher altitude areas, such as America and Asia. That was causing 3-knot wind bug. As for the aircraft, the cockpit and visual animations, the Cessna 208B Grand Caravan, the AP button animations have been fixed. The Cessna Grand Caravan, the Beechcraft Bonanza, and the Icon placards have been updated. The Cessna 172 Skyhawk compass texture has been improved. Savage Cub, the tail wheel blur effect has now correctly triggered. The Shock Ultra arcs on the airspeed indicator is correctly set. The Shock Ultra Turbo mode has been removed from the dashboard, and the Boeing 787 MCP buttons have had some visual improvements. General Aviation Systems. The Cessna 208 propeller sound has been improved when the RPM is changing. The Cessna Longitude AP altitude speed management improvements. The Cessna Longitude auto throttle is now inhibited during takeoff and until 400 feet above ground level. The Dasher yaw damper now automatically turned on when the AP is enabled. The Beechcraft King Air windshield de-icing is now working. Well, that's helpful. The Icon A5, the incorrect heading indicator notification, is now triggering properly. The Shock Ultra flaps now operate mechanically instead of electrically. The Shock Ultra trim management improvements. The Cessna Citation reverse thrust has been removed. And the X-Cub, the IAS AP mode, is now working properly. And the Dasher, TBM, and Cessna 208 PT6 engine shutdown duration has been increased. General Aviation avionics have also had a lot of work done. The Cessna Longitude, several knobs of the G5000 are now working. The Beechcraft Baron, the Bonanza, the Cessna 172, and the Diamond D40 have all had the missing alt knobs included. The Beechcraft King Air, the menu key is now working properly. The Cessna 152, the avionics state have been fixed using the honeycomb device battery switch. GNS flight display alignment has been fixed on the Garmin 530. The G1000 automatically switches from nav to lock when needed. The G1000 to ETA and ETE have been fixed so they won't display the wrong values. The G1000, 3000 and 3X AP setup is no longer reset when enabling the AP, and has also fixed missing flight plan when the selected departure coordinates is on the world map. The G3 text size in the approach box has been increased. The approaches can now be selected and loaded, and fix the bad information in the nearest VOR page when an unknown VOR is selected. Airliner Systems. In general, the AP behavior have had some improvements. Boeing 747 rear wheel steering has been fixed. Pressing the battery button now always displays on. Improved flap deployment and retraction sequences. As far as the Boeing 787, fixed auto throttle, not giving back control to the pilot when disabled. That's a very important one, I think. The 787, the center tanks drain first when decreasing fuel quantity via fuel and payload menu. The auto throttle is now automatically disengaged when landing. The auto throttle now engages correctly during takeoff roll when conditions are met. The alt intervention and no longer needs to be pressed again when not needed. The Airbus A320, automatic speed management improvements, and the alpha floor condition is now correctly triggered. Airliner avionics. In general, weight is better taken into account for V-speed calculations. The 747, the FMC, now allows to activate approach without going to route page. The approach VREF speeds are fixed. Empty rectangles no longer display on the FMA. Runways are now displayed in correct order in the FMC. And the cruise altitude is no longer automatically filled in the FMC. The 787, LNAV and VNAV correctly display as armed in the FMA when conditions are met. Altitude target on the MCP can no longer be set to negative values. Auto throttle mode no longer displayed on the FMA when the auto throttle is disabled. Fixed the wrong flat value displayed in the FMC takeoff page. Target heading line on ND is no longer reset when in heading mode. And direct to flight plans can now be entered in the FMC. The A320, the target altitude can now be changed when the AP is disabled. The armed mode no longer appears in the boxes on the FMA. Flaps indication instead of F on the ECAM. F messages, invalid entry, replaced by not allowed. The FMGS now only displays arrival procedures corresponding to the selected runway. The FMGS now correctly displays the ETA for the approach points. Remove the remaining waypoints on ND after selecting a different approach procedure. Fix the heading bug alignment offset issue, and fixed missing runways in the perf page of the FMGS when the departure runway is already selected. Fix the constraints flickering on ND, and the FMGS block fuel indication now correctly initializes. Miscellaneous fixes. Fixed the freezes caused by glass cockpits. Travel to feature no longer disengages autopilot when used. Weather. Fixed the 225° 3 knot issue with inconsistent wind in the game. Fixed an issue with weather persistency on flight restart. Services. Upgraded the multiplayer servers. The marketplace rating display on bundles has been improved. performance drop after downloading an item in the marketplace has been removed. An additional purchase outside the market no longer has an impact on the installed filter in the marketplace, as it considered as a community content. Add-on purchased outside the marketplace are now available in the Content Manager when online and offline, if downloaded in the community folder. Third-party content thumbnails displayed have been improved. Pausing the download during installation has been fixed. Various typo fixes in multiple languages. Subtitles are now enabled by default. Well, that's irritating. Some subtitle options have been moved from sound to accessibility menus so users can set it during the install. Removed the rotation clamp on instrument cameras. The pilot camera position can now be saved or reset. Bush trips. Fixed the leg completion trigger. Completionist achievement should now unlock when all activities have been completed. And as far as world scenery, detected buildings that intersect roads are now excluded. Longer bridges are less prone to having a gap. UK city house models should no longer appear in US suburbs. In the Wild achievement can now be unlocked. Whew, what a list! That is a lot of changes in a very short period of time. What was it, 2 weeks? Good God. After all that, I feel like I want to make this a quickie. So, this is the Icon A5, as you've probably figured out by now. What has this got to do with anything historical? Well, actually, the route between St. Petersburg and Tampa across the bay there was the world's first commercial airline. Yeah, I know. Weird, huh? And it was an airboat kind of deal. Yeah, so on January 1st, 1914, the world's first scheduled passenger airline service took off, operating between St. Petersburg and Tampa in Florida. The St. Petersburg-Tampa airboat line was a very short-lived endeavor, only 4 months. But it paved the way for today's transcontinental flights. The first pilot was Tony Janis, an experienced test pilot and barnstormer. The first paying passenger was Abram C. Fell, former mayor of St. Petersburg. Their 21-mile flight across the bay took 23 minutes. They flew in a flying boat designed by Thomas Benoit, an aviation entrepreneur from St. Louis. In 1913, a simple trip between the two cities sitting on opposite sides of Tampa Bay took about 2 hours by steamship, or from 4 to 12 hours by rail. Traveling by automobile around the bay took about 20 hours. A flight would have taken about 20 minutes. The inaugural pilot for this scheme was, of course, Tony Janis, and he gave flying exhibitions, tested military airplanes, and flew long-distance airplanes and airboats. He piloted one of the first tests of airborne machine guns as well. On March 1st, 1912, he carried Captain Albert Berry aloft to make the very first parachute jump from an airplane. The Benoit flying boats used were a Model 14. It weighed, 1,250 pounds, and was powered by a Roberts 6-cylinder inline liquid-cooled 75 horsepower engine. The airplane had a top speed of 64 miles an hour, and the hull was made of 3 layers of spruce and fabric between each layer. The wings were made of spruce spars with linen stretched over them. The plane was built to hold only a pilot and 1 passenger, side by side. The first flight took off on New Year's Day, 1914, with about 3,000 people in attendance to watch as the first ticket was auctioned off. This first flight was actually taken no higher than 50 feet over the water, and halfway to Tampa, the engine actually started to misfire, so he ended up touching down in the bay, made a few adjustments, and then took off again. As the plane landed at the entrance of the Hillsborough River near downtown Tampa, Janis and Fell was swarmed by cheering, clapping, and waving crowds of about 3,500 people. In all, the airline made 2 flights daily, 6 days a week. The regular fare was $5 per person, that'd be about $100 in today's money, and $5 per 100 pounds of freight. Tickets sold out for over 16 weeks in advance, and a second Benoit airboat was added, and flights were extended to Sarasota, Bradenton, and Manatee. Tony Jannus's brother, Roger, was added as the second pilot for the line. The airline operated for nearly 4 months and carried a total of 1,205 passengers. Passenger interest declined rapidly when the winter residents began headed back north, and on April the 27th, Tony and Roger Jannus flew their last flights before leaving Florida, putting on an air show over Tampa Bay. The brothers continued to give exhibitions, perform tests of aircraft, and train other pilots. On October 12, 1916, Tony Jannus was training Russian pilots when his plane crashed into the Black Sea. His body was never recovered. Roger Jannus also died while flying. He crashed on September 4, 1918, during an air patrol over France. So there you have it. The world's first commercial airline was amphibious. Who'd have thought? Well, you know what they say about small acorns. Squirrels like to eat them. No, that's not it, is it? Anyway, this is Mr. Adrian. Thanks for joining me. And of course, I'll see you on the next update. Till then, fly safe.